What is up, everyone? Hope everybody is all good. Right, today video we want to talk about three big mistakes that I see a lot of people do when they are in a dieting phase, and these big mistakes are what's going to hold people back. So I just want to make sure and double check that a lot of you are not doing this. Now again, this is coming from my many years of working with people, my own training experience, and just seeing a lot of the pitfalls that people used to fall into, but now that we've fixed, again, when people come to me, we fix these issues, and then it's just what I see a lot of people do, and they shouldn't do these things because it's going to hold them back when you are trying to get lean and retain all your muscle tissue. So especially with it being summertime as well, everyone is in the midst of dieting phases and getting lean. So three big mistakes that people make that you don't want to make. So again, number one, right, don't nocebo yourself into being weak because you're in a calorie deficit and you are dieting down. We know we've got less food coming in, we've got less carbohydrates, we know that we're not as fed, and we're not going to feel as full as we might do when we're in a surplus or a gaining phase. We know that. That does not mean that we have to be weak in the gym. If we strategically, if we time our carbs right, and we're on point with our recovery, sleep, stress management, time your carbs pre-workout when you need them most, there is no reason why you can't go in the gym and still perform pretty well. Things that may take a hit, I spoke about this plenty of times before, is going to be potentially presses, so bench presses, dumbbell presses, machine presses, all that sort of stuff that can potentially take a hit as you lose body fat and you lose stability and leverage to press more weight. That is normal, but don't nocebo yourself and think my numbers have to drop. Everything has to take a massive hit, so you're just going to come in the gym and be weak, and then all of a sudden you're down multiple reps, you're taking 20-30 kilo off of a lift that you've been doing. If that happens, more than likely that's going to lead to muscle tissue loss. So we don't nocebo yourself into being weak, because you don't have to. As long as you come in with the right mindset, carbs pre-workout, a good training plan that's set up with just enough volume, you're going to be good to go. But you don't have to nocebo yourself into getting weak. Don't do that. It will mess you up, I guarantee you. I've seen it time and time again. You have to be mentally strong up here. You don't have to lose a lot of strength. You lose little tiny bits, which is normal, but don't nocebo yourself into being weak. Okay, so that's number one. Now that leads me on to number two, which is a sort of a counterbalance point to that. Now, number two, don't just chase numbers in the logbook and allow technique to get progressively worse as you go through a dieting phase. Your technique gets worse and worse and worse just to satisfy the same number. Look, as we diet down, you will lose a little bit of leverage, as we say, with presses. So imagine we've got 100 kilo for 8 written down in our notebook on week 1 of the diet. Now, as we go through the weeks, we keep trying to fight for that, but technique is getting worse. We're using even more momentum, really using a fast ascension. We're bouncing the weight off the bottom. We're getting really sloppy just to get the rep through and just satisfy the number in the logbook and write 100 kilo for 8. But that's not the same 100 kilo for 8 that you might have been doing weeks ago. Now you're just chasing the number in the logbook and you're letting technique get worse and worse and worse. So it's a combination of ego taking over, but then you don't want to be seen to be dropping any numbers because you think that you're losing muscle mass. You have to know when to just back off from a movement and take a little bit of weight off. It's going to be fine in some instances. If you find that your technique is getting worse and worse and worse and it's getting sloppy, again, this is the benefits of recording your videos as well. If you find that is happening, just shave a little bit of weight off, shave 5 kilo off and go again. Keep your technique nice and clean. Don't allow all momentum in your technique to get worse, because ultimately, what's the goal of a dieting phase? We're trying to retain muscle tissue and put the best stimulus on the muscle tissue to retain it as we diet down. So letting technique get progressively worse, when you think about it, it's backwards thinking. It's actually going to provide a worse stimulus than if we were to just shave 5 kilo off and keep technique pretty clean. You're going to provide a better stimulus to keep your muscle tissue hanging around, and that's the name of the game. That's what we want when we're dieting down. So when you're smart about it, and certain times we'll call for it, don't be scared to pull a little bit of weight off something. Keep your technique clean and don't just let technique get worse and worse and worse just to satisfy a number in a logbook. It'll lead you down a nasty rabbit hole, especially when you're dieting, right? So that's number 2. Number 3, don't change your training drastically. This is one thing that you still see this online nowadays as well. I think it comes from the 70s and the Arnold era or whatever. People say when you go into a dieting phase, we're not going to be doing any heavy weights anymore. It's all going to be high reps. So all 15 plus rep sets, all this stuff, tons of supersets, less rest in between sets, because we think that with the more calorie burning expenditure we have in the session, that's going to help us get ripped and lean. And again, it's backwards thinking. The training that built your muscle tissue is what will retain your muscle tissue. Your training shouldn't really change. You might pull a little bit of set numbers down, a little bit of volume. Again, I spoke about this before. You might make a couple of tweaks to exercise selection to have some movements that might be a little bit more stable, but you're not going to be drastically changing training. Because look, what is the purpose of a training session? We're trying to supply as much mechanical tension on a set per set basis. So if we're coming in and we're doing all these supersets and high rep sets with 1 minute rest, we're ultimately inhibiting the amount of mechanical tension that we're providing to the muscle tissue and the amount of stimulus that we're directing to the muscle tissue to then retain it. So if we're changing our training completely, it makes no sense. You need to look at your training session as the stimulus to retain muscle tissue. Let your expenditure from your cardio, your steps, your other things outside the gym, and your diet, the deficit that you're creating with your food, let that take care of dropping body fat. Your training in the gym, the lifting weight side of things, that has got nothing to do with dropping body fat. It's there to retain muscle tissue. So let your other things outside the gym play the biggest role and factor in dropping body fat, okay? Those 3 things there, that's going to keep you in a healthy position for keeping your muscle tissue as you're dieting down, right? Very big points. Often underrated. People don't understand the importance of them. But again, if you are dieting now, make sure you implement these. Or if you have been dieting for a while, make sure you're not making these mistakes. It's not too late. You can make a couple of tweaks. All right, so look, let me know what you think. Any other video ideas you have for me, any questions, drop them down below. Hopefully this one was useful. And I'll speak to you all in the next one. Have a good one.